Hi, I'm Steve Chernosky here for our PANJ Radio election special. And I'm here with Anthony Giordano and Peter Mendonez, who are running for the 15th Legislative District, the General Assembly. If you didn't know, we have an election this November. So, we do this every election year. We try to inform voters, increase democracy here in our town. And if you are following us, we're on the PANJ Radio Facebook page. We are on a thread where you can post questions, and you can also call in. We'll be taking calls after 7:30. The call-in number is 609-460-4673. Again, I'm your host, Steve Chernosky, and I'll say welcome to Anthony and Peter. Hi, guys.
Thanks
Good
for
evening.
having us.
Thanks for having us.
So, to begin, where you guys grow up? Where'd you go to school? Where do you live now? Kind of. What are your day jobs? Anthony, why don't you?
Well, I'll start. I'm Anthony Giordano. I grew up in Hamilton Township. I went to school. I graduated from McCarson High School. Then went on to Rider University. I have a degree in accounting, Bachelor of Science from Rider. Graduated in 1998. And for the last 17 years, I've been both an auditor and accountant for the state of New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Some things in my free time when I'm not running for office. I've been a basketball coach and a softball coach at the grammar school level. I'm also a basketball referee and a softball umpire, and I'm the president of the local Mercer County Softball Umpires Association for recreation ball.
Cool. And where are you living at now?
Right now, I live in the city of Trenton in the Villa Park section in East Trenton.
Cool. And Peter, how about you?
Well, great to be on the show, Steve. So thank you very much. I'm Councilman Pete Mendonez from West Windsor. I'm a Jersey boy. Grew up in Piscataway, not too far from here. Lived in a lot of different places: Newark, Old Bridge, Somerset, and my wife and I just bought the house in West Windsor about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's why I got involved in local politics. Just West Windsor is a great school district. We just want to get involved and conserve and make sure that if we do have children, it would be just as good as everybody had before us. So what I do professionally, I'm an electrical engineer, went to school in NJIT, and really started off in big companies like PSE&G and IBM. But after IBM, I became a startup junkie. So I went to a cybersecurity company. I went to a company, Veridity. It's a clean energy company. Now I'm a co-founder of a clean energy company in Princeton, where we work closely with the university.
What's their name?
It's called AF Mensa.
Nice. Well, thank you. So we got both, local Jersey guys here, and also went to college in Jersey. So another question I have coming up in a little bit. We're here on PANJ Radio. I'm your host, Steve Chernosky, talking with the GOP challengers for the 15th Legislative General Assembly election this November. And so I guess our first topic we'll hop right into, which is really popular right now. The Asbury Park Press just did a very long thing on property taxes on Friday. They're doing a series. I posted the link to our Facebook page. So, Anthony, in your campaign video, you note that New Jersey has the highest property taxes in the nation, second highest sales tax, and the sixth highest income tax. If elected, what would you do to help alleviate that burden that the state faces?
Well, as you know, the property taxes highest in the nation. Everybody knows that. A lot of people are unfortunately forced to look for other places to live than New Jersey because they're just simply not able to afford it. And although the legislature doesn't deal directly in the property taxes because they're controlled mostly at the local level, there are many statewide issues that certainly come into play where the legislature's approach, or at least things that happen at the state level, have a lot to do with the impact of the local property taxes. I think some of the steps that can be taken towards getting property taxes under control, one would be education funding reform. I think that's definitely something. Also, as we know, there are many municipalities that are struggling with affordable housing mandates that have been imposed. And I think there are things that the legislature can do in both of those areas, which are really the key factors that come into play when municipalities and counties are forming their budgets, which is what then translates down into the high property tax burdens that we see here in New Jersey.
Peter?
Yeah, and as a councilman in West Windsor, I got elected 2 years ago, and we kept the municipal tax rate flat for the last 2 years. And as Anthony mentioned, property taxes or on the burden of the municipal politicians. And the way we kept it flat without cutting any services is really just trying to find efficiencies and cut waste in the government. And it really comes down to basic, knowing how to use Microsoft Excel, being able to do regression models, and just be able to have accurate forecasts and make tough decisions. So that's what we did in West Windsor, and I hope to take that same type of mindset to the Assembly.
Now, I know there's differences can you tell listeners, because I feel like, so what would be the difference that, you could deal with property taxes or just taxes in general on the legislative level versus the municipal level? Because I think people might struggle with, what am I voting for? So what can you do for people's local property taxes or just taxes in general?
Well, so my background, as I mentioned, is I'm a business owner. And the people we're running against essentially have always been in the public sector. Reed himself is getting 5 public paychecks, which is not really conducive or representative of the hardworking, roll-up-your-sleeve type of American. So just going in there and having representation for small business owners, I think, is very helpful when we create policy in the legislature. So that's why we're running. That's what we're about, just to mix things up, and because really it's a mess in Trenton.
Well, as far as something that can be done at the state level it's not just property taxes; it's the entire tax climate in New Jersey. Like you referenced from my video, sales taxes, income taxes, property taxes. People are literally being hit in every single pocket they have, and I think what we need, and part of the centerpiece of my campaign, is really to make New Jersey a more friendly state to do business, a more friendly state in which to live, where we make efforts to cut back on the tax burdens. Obviously, there are spending cuts that have to take place in order for that to happen. And I also think we need some regulatory changes. A lot of the regulations that are imposed at the state level impose a severe hardship on businesses, in particular small businesses, which we know are the lifeblood to getting our state's economy back on the right track again. And I think it's time that we revisit the whole gamut of everything we have going on at the state level and the presentation we make as a state, as far as how attractive it is to live and to do business, because the fact of the matter is right now it's too expensive for too many people.
Okay. Thank you, guys. So on the state level can certainly influence the local level. And just for example, West Windsor's property taxes increased 13.3% from 2008 to 2014, but that's not really uncommon. That happens all over.
Right.
Wasn't Governor Christie's 2% cap supposed to fix this? I mean, if you look at almost every municipality across the state, our taxes have raised from 2008 to 2014, and West Amwell in the district, they went down. But I believe all the others in the district went up. Wasn't Christie's 2% cap supposed to fix this?
Well, one thing is that even though it's a 2% cap, like in West Windsor, we always try, or the mayor and the administration always try to maximize that 2% cap. So it's 2% every year, every year, every year. So even though the cap is effective in most, it's all politics is local, and we just got to fight it on the local level.
Right, and there are many things that aren't subject to that same 2% cap. So there are even ways for the local municipalities to even get around that, so that the property taxes actually end up going up more than 2%.
Right.
And like Pete referenced, all politics is local. And as Republicans who are of the belief that that government which governs best is that which is closest to the people, it's much easier to turn out your local councilman or your local mayor than it is your state legislature, or even moving on up. So that's why the decisions are made at home, the spending decisions are made at home, and then it's much easier to control your local officials than it is moving up. So that's why it has to start at the bottom and work its way on up.
But it does tie into state. Like at the end of that Asbury Park press series, the first series, they have a petition. It's change.org, where they basically beg. They beg people. It's a Gannett publication. Beg people to sign the petition to do something about this now. And they say, go out and vote in the General Assembly elections.
It's the best thing to do.
and they say, as cliche as they say, I think it's step 5 on, I just posted on our Facebook page. And I'll quote from Patrick Murray, who's many people know him as the director of the Monmouth University Polling Institute. And he goes, I think people are fed up with government. How do you expect people to go out and vote for an institution in which about 1 in 10 have any faith in. Experts say other factors play a part as well. The state's lack of competitive races, the schedule of its elections, and the method in which New Jersey votes. And the numbers are unlikely to improve next November. Matt Friedman on Politico New Jersey continues, and he goes, "It's taken common wisdom in New Jersey political circles that November's election," and that's this November's election, I want to be clear that, so I'm quoting him now again, "in which the state assembly will be at the top of the ticket, will have the lowest turnout for a general election in state history." And that's after the state has already had a string of elections that set low turnout records, including June's primary, when just 5% of registered voters cast ballots. Is this part of the problem? Is that people, our taxes and all other issues are coming up just because either people aren't informed or they don't know about it or they're just apathetic?
Well, I think people get discouraged because, time after time, they think they're voting for change and they end up with the same thing all over again. Now, although it is a fact that a lot of times the same incumbents keep being turned back over and over again, and I know it's been said recently with even as unpopular as Congress is, where they have an approval level in like the single digits, still 90% and 95% of all congressmen still end up getting reelected. So
all politics is local, as
right,
you guys said. Everybody loves their own, right?
Right, exactly. It's like everybody else has the bad congressman, but I like mine. Well, one thing that Pete and I are trying to do is, we're trying to make a change here right in our district. So, we recognize the fact that this is the first time in 16 years where the assembly is going to be at the top of the ticket. And because of that, the turnout is expected to be incredibly low this year. And some people are wondering if we'll even get to a quarter of registered voters coming out to vote. But that's why we've been working hard for the last several months, going out to community events, meeting people, knocking on doors, going door to door, listening to people's concerns, and taxes are right at the top of their lists. And, this is the perfect opportunity this year. If anything, with the turnout being as low as it's going to be, that means that every person that does come out to vote, their vote counts for that much more. People think, well, I'm only one in how many, what's my opinion going to make in the whole realm of things? Well, in a year like this where the turnout's going to be very low, every vote counts. And you'd be surprised how, these races could swing on a very small number of votes. So if people really want change, and this is the time to do it, and that's what we're trying to offer.
Yeah, as Assemblyman Jack Chitterelli said at our convention, is we're trying to catch lightning in a bottle. And one thing we're trying to focus on as well, too, is really rounding up millennials. Getting out, as you know, in Twitter, Facebook, getting them out to vote and getting them impassioned and just reminding them whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Liberal, just vote. And that's the important, because it just makes me sad that they're expecting under 5% or even 15% turnout. So for everybody who's listening, doesn't matter who you are, just vote.
So in addition to getting millennials and other people out to vote, top of the ticket, every vote really does matter mathematically. It's a bigger deal this year. How do you guys as Republicans in a district that has 40% registered Democrats, 13% registered Republicans, but as I should say, this might be the answer, but 45% unaffiliated.
There you go.
How do you engage people in what seems like an uphill climb? Well, I should say better engage.
Right.
Knocking on doors is one.
Exactly.
We've been doing door-to-door,
right.
Just meeting the people, shaking hands, going on stations like this, local media, just getting the voices out wherever we can, whether it's knocking on doors, going to local flea markets, whatever it takes.
Absolutely.
Now I'm going to take a question. So we were talking about costs. This is one thing, again, state people can encourage. It's from Elaine Clisham, and she says, in Hunterdon County, we have 26 municipalities and 30 school districts. Each one of those districts needs a superintendent and an administrator, and one of those districts doesn't even have any schools. Elaine, can you please put down which one that is? I'd like to know that.
That's an interesting one.
Maybe that is, I'm trying to guess. Schools account for up to 2/3 of property taxes. People complain like crazy about high property taxes, but resolutely refuse to consider cost savings options like school district regionalization. Right. What should the state legislature's role be in controlling local property taxes, and how should they go about doing it? Would you support restructuring local aid so that it incentivizes things like regionalization? And before you guys answer, I will say we did it here. In South Hunterdon, Lambertville, Stockton, and West Stockton's out of district, but West Amwell is in district. We regionalized, and we're pretty similar demographically, and it was still an uphill battle. But we did it. And, I don't think we've seen the savings yet, but we're hoping to. So what do you guys think?
Well, Go ahead, Ant.
Well, I think that those are perfectly valid options that can be considered, but I don't necessarily go for the carrot and stick mentality where the legislature is going to like wield it over them and try to pressure individual districts, either municipalities or counties to regionalize. I think it's something that definitely should be explored. And again, that's where we get back to the all politics is local thing. If you have local costs that are going up, and that's something that should be considered, then that's something that the people in that locality need to take upon themselves to make that choice. Like you said, it's been something that's been tried right in this area here, and but that's one option of many. And again, I don't think you necessarily. I'm in favor of regionalization by choice, not regionalization by force.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to add too, like in West Windsor, Plainsboro, we have an election for school board. Right, and it's usually in column E or F, and most people don't even. So it's going to be already a low turnout. And voting in column E and F and voter fatigue that you talked about before, some people might not even turn out. And locally here, I think we only have, at least in West Windsor, Plainsboro, the 3 incumbents. Out of the 3 incumbents, only two are running unopposed. So it's less information is being distributed. People don't even know what's going on. It's just more about ironically, it's more education about.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're here. That's why when we did this a year ago with Representative Lance and Janice Kovac, we just saw like it's just rattling my brain and saying, maybe it's just that voters, the education is not there. Like, do people really know what you guys will go on to do if you're elected? Do you know how it will matter in their lives? And I think if voters knew that. In like making that connection, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a very snippet of a YouTube video that I put together. I don't know if anybody was familiar, if anybody voted last year, but we had these ballot questions.
I did.
Yeah, we had these ballot questions, and I will link them on the Facebook page. And there were 2 ballot questions, and I really wanted to focus on the one that's talked about open space.
Right.
And people saw open space. Hey, I like open space. Good for the environment. And then I kind of learned that the environmentalists themselves were split on this,
Right.
Because the way funding went. And I'm like, okay, well, if the Republicans are against it and the Democrats are split on it, then surely it's going to fail. And it passed in every single county. And it's just like, what the hell is going on? I don't know what else to say, so I'm just going to play the YouTube video now. I will also link it to our Facebook page.
Maybe voter turnout is low because simply people don't understand what they're voting on. Even some of the smartest people in the state of New Jersey. So let's go to the smartest place in the state. Let's go to Princeton, New Jersey.
And I'm going to stop it right there. I will, I just linked it on our page, so you can watch it if you really feel like it. Please watch it after the show. And people at the Princeton Public Library they read it in front of me. And even policy people didn't know what. And is this part of the problem?
It's definitely a lot of legalese, and I did watch the video. It's a great video, so everybody should watch it. And this is one reason why we need mathematicians like Anthony and engineers like myself in the legislature, because it's specifically written vaguely, so it's in their favor.
Absolutely. There's way too much legalese in the way the public questions are written. I mean, I think there are many of us out there who consider ourselves to be pretty well educated and still have to read it and reread it and read it a third time and read the interpretive statement and read the interpretive statement several times, and then sometimes still not quite sure at the end of the day what it is you're looking at and what the ramifications are going to be of going one way or the other on it.
And just to be clear, I think we're all for open space. By definition, being a conservative, you want to conserve the planet. So open space is very important, especially in West Windsor.
Exactly. And then going back to the legalese, as they say, the devil is in the details. And a lot of the times when those public questions are written, the devil kind of is in the details with all that. That's why sometimes you do have to watch and think and look and read a second, third, and fourth time, because sometimes things aren't always what they seem.
Yep, they aren't. And the last related question I think I'll ask to this goes into schools. Even though it's at the municipal level, I mean, we talked about you don't believe in the carrot and stick. Christie has certainly tried it. Governor Christie certainly tried it. And you mentioned you moved to West Windsor, for the schools. And, Newsweek just released the 500 best schools in the country. 6 out of the top 10 were in the state of New Jersey. Hopewell Valley ranked 107th on that. 100 Central was 357th out of 500. This is in the entire country. U.S. News had a rankings that they do every year. West Windsor South was 12th in the state. North was 18th in the state. So our schools, and this is something at the state level, are some of the best in the country. But students leave in droves when it comes to higher education. According to the Washington Post, our colleges would have to expand 44% to fit all of NJ's college students. And only 9% of our students come from out of state. Quoting the Washington Post, the state is packed with applicants who have high SAT scores, well-off parents, but has a relatively lean higher education system. More than half of New Jersey's high school graduates who enroll at four-year colleges choose one that's out of state. Governor Christie convened a task force in 2010 to review this problem. Quoting, it reported that 2 decades of state funding cuts have hurt higher education and recommended an immediate funding infusion to avoid serious economic problems. But then they said fiscal problems are going to, happen. Now, if it was run by like a business, if the state is run like a business, this just seems bad business. We're spending so much money on educating kids, but they're all leaving to go out and be educated someplace else. And then, they are trying to do data on do they return. Is there anything we can do to help, incubate these entrepreneurs? And, you guys both were educated in New Jersey and you stayed.
That's right.
How do we get more talent like that to go to college here and then stay here and start businesses here? And because, of the love for the Garden State, or maybe it's something else, or the ease of doing business.
Right. Well, again, it gets all back to the ease of doing business and the cost of living, and the fact of the matter is we have a lot of excellent, great institutions of higher education here in New Jersey. And Pete and I both were educated here at college in New Jersey. And the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, once they go out of state and, receive their college education, they find that if they, want to start a family, they kind of can't afford to come back, especially with the way that, the whole national economy is now, where, people can disagree on exactly how much we've rebounded over the last several years. But, unfortunately, it's cheaper to go elsewhere sometimes. And I think we need to get back to making New Jersey more business friendly so that, even if, our high school graduates do go on to higher education out of state, that they do still have that sense that they can come back and raise their families here in New Jersey. And I think that's why it's important that we make some changes with the way things are done at the state level.
It's definitely important to hire locally. So where my office is, and the company I co-founded is actually in a Princeton University incubator, which just came about maybe
Nice.
4 or 5 years. It's called Tiger Labs on Nassau Street.
Oh, very
so
cool.
pretty much every startup within the university is located there. And that's relatively new for a very old university. So things like that help out and make sense. And also just in terms of density and increasing our schools or having children go to school in New Jersey for college. You have Princeton University has a big endowment, good $58 billion endowment, and a lot of property they could definitely build. And also, when I went to NJIT, we did a lot of online courses. So today I'm taking a lot of online courses from home, and they're easy to do at your convenience. So we got to think of out-of-the-box ways to get things done.
Okay. So moving on, business environment. New York State, I think, did a program where they were, you can, if you start a business here and it employs over a certain amount of people, I don't know, 50 or was it 100?
I think it's even less than that, but yeah.
Even less than that. And you don't have to pay any state income tax for a decade. Is that correct?
I believe it's a decade, maybe even more than that.
Maybe even more than that. And when I was interviewing a lawyer on this who's trying to help, regrow businesses in New Jersey, he's just like, look at New York. What is New York is doing?
Right.
And what could we do here to become more business friendly here in New Jersey to get more jobs?
Well, just from personal experience, and yes, as I said in the beginning, I do work for the state of New Jersey. I'm in community affairs now, but I think it's ironic that the first 10 years of my career in state work, I worked for the Commerce and Economic Growth Commission. And basically the mission of the Commerce and Economic Growth Commission was to help business owners navigate the rest of the state bureaucracy. Now, when we see...
Like a translator, huh?
Yeah, now, when we see that, even New York is starting to trump us in the way of incentives to draw businesses, I mean, that's when we really have to reconsider how we're doing things. And like I said, I always thought it was just bizarre that, you basically had to create an entire another arm of the state to help your businesses navigate all the other arms of the state. I mean, that's just absurd. That's why it's time that we completely rethink the way we do things. I think top down, we need to do a complete overhaul of the way business is done in New Jersey.
I totally agree with that. As a small business owner, really, it's just the rethinking the whole thing. Some incentives like New York, we almost thought about going into New York. New York City as a company. It's a quick commute
Really?
From West Windsor. But we stuck in New Jersey just because we believe in New Jersey. The electricity industry started here, right? Thomas Edison. So we assume that the revolution of the energy industry would be here as well.
So on that, you said it's a quick commute from West Windsor to New York if New Jersey Transit trains are running on time, which has been a growing problem over the past couple years. So, the Transportation Trust Fund has had a lot of trouble getting funded. We have a lot of things to pay for. The tunnel obviously has been a big thing. Hopefully the feds chip in and do their part. I guess that's what, New York and New Jersey are both hoping for, ideally. But how would you guys replenish the very in trouble Transportation Trust Fund?
Well, one thing is our Assemblyman, if we get elected November 3rd, so don't forget to vote, Assemblyman John Bramnick proposed a gas tax hike to help with the Transportation Trust Fund. He would be our boss. It's all about working on both sides of the aisle and horse trading. I think there was some negotiations or some type of incentives for the trust fund to be replenished through a gas hike, whereby I believe it would be lower taxes on the estate taxes. Maybe Anthony can comment more on that.
It would definitely have to be something where the taxes or fees imposed in other areas even dwarfed any potential increase in taxes for me to consider being supportive of something like that. And I think what it is it's all about priorities. You have to set priorities. We know that we have an infrastructure problem here in the state of New Jersey.
We're not the only one.
That's right.
That's true. That is true. But and we know that the shape of some of our roads and bridges are deplorable compared to other areas throughout the country, and it's a matter of getting down to legislative priorities. You have to, there's only so much money to go around,
right.
And you have to make it work. Although the raising the gas tax is something that can be considered, again, we have to really take a good, close, hard look at, what other things we might be able to ease the burdens before we think of increasing any burdens in any other areas.
And you mentioned it yourself, New Jersey Transit had the biggest rate hike, I think, last week, 9%.
And the service hasn't improved either.
Exactly. Right. So we got to come down on that as well. You got to ask the tough questions. What do we get out of the rate hike is essentially the question.
Right.
And again, I'm Steve Chernosky. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Steve Chernosky here on PANJ Radio with our election special. We have an election in November for the General Assembly, and I'm here with Anthony Giordano and Peter Mendonez from West Windsor, running for the General Assembly seats in the New Jersey State Legislature. How you guys doing? Round one gone. We keep posting. We have a link on our Facebook page if you would like to ask any questions for us. And I guess next I'll talk about. Let us go into how do we cut costs. So, guys, one of the ways to make New Jersey more affordable would be to cut some of our costs. And, you look at the, state workers, fire, police, education. A lot of our money is going to this. For example, Anthony, you mentioned you're a state worker. My full-time job is a history teacher. And people here, we live on a border. Everyone just says, just go over to Pennsylvania when you retire, and because Pennsylvania won't tax your pension. And, and in fact, they're one of 5 states, according to a study done by the Connecticut General Assembly, does. So if education contributes so much to property tax costs and all the costs in general, what could we do to make the state more affordable, to trim some of that? And then a second question I have is there a way to keep all these retired public employees here and just say, like, is there a way to stem the exodus of retirees from the state and just people who can't afford it in general? Because if you look at the bridge here, you can see the exodus in real time every time at work when 5 p.m. happens. So what would you guys do to make the state more affordable in the General Assembly?
Well, it's not just cutting costs, but also finding efficiencies. So like we do as a councilman in West Windsor, we find a lot of shared services that we can do with other towns. So I just want to hammer it home, all politics is local. We know what's good for our neighborhood and our area, and one way to find cost savings is through efficiencies, through shared services. So I think that's one point. Two, I don't blame everybody for leaving after retiring. I mean, especially with our weather. North Carolina is great. Florida is great too. But maybe I can let Anthony comment more about it since he is a state worker.
Well, again, it comes back to affordability, and that's paramount with people's concern, especially if they want to. Of course, climate does come into play when you're thinking of retirement. You may not necessarily want it to get too hot or too cold, but we have to make it more affordable. And, as Pete referenced, at the local level, you have to look at efficiencies and perhaps considering regionalizations or something like that. I think another thing that we can look at in New Jersey is our counties. You basically have an entire intermediate level of bureaucracy, if you will, that controls a big part of people's property taxes. And a lot of people outside of maybe parks or something like that really don't understand what it is that the county does.
Right.
They do have a role, with some, like jail systems and everything like that, and county roads. But outside of that, you have, I think, a prime area that might be something that you might be able to take a look at as far as ways to reduce costs here in New Jersey.
And you guys talked about county, and this is a question coming from a lot of different angles. One of the questionnaires on the Facebook page brought up affordable housing. There was a court ruling, Mount Laurel 4, Monroe Court decision, trying to say that municipalities across the state need to now comply and build more affordable housing units. Robbinsville, not in the district. An article from Brielle Orlicoli says, the mayor of Robbinsville was quoted, I believe, all of us should build affordable housing, but asking us to build 1,000 units is just unsustainable. Similarly, Hopewell Borough Mayor in district says allegedly the borough is responsible for 155 units. I think that's a total fantasy. Now, if we're talking about growing, Robbinsville is houses Amazon.
Right.
And, a lot of minimum wage jobs, but nonetheless jobs.
Right.
And a lot of people from our district, including Trenton, do commute to those jobs, including a Z line that is financed by the Mercer County government to get them from Hamilton Township to Robbinsville because many don't have cars.
Right.
So, how, is Robbinsville mayor trying to have his cake and eat it too? He's trying to say, oh, Amazon, come in, have jobs, but, well, no, we don't want the affordable housing built here. What can state legislatures do to encourage cooperation on the local level or compromises on the local level?
Well, I have an issue with a lot of the whole series of the Mount Laurel decisions. And I think the reason why we see things turning in the direction we've gone, where the courts have kind of taken the main role, is because the legislature hasn't really acted much on it. But I think it comes down to philosophy and line of thinking. As someone who believes that decisions are better made locally, I think that the Mount Laurel decisions preclude a lot of municipalities from being able to control a lot of their local zoning, which they need to do to control costs, to determine what the right level of business is to have within their communities, what the correct amount of housing is to have within their communities, how many schools they're going to need. And I don't think you have a workable system where you have a New Jersey Supreme Court that, I'm not sure how accountable they've been lately, but I think the series of Mount Laurel decisions that they've handed out have a lot to do with the reason that property taxes are so high in New Jersey. And I'm someone who's in favor of giving the decisions back to the local municipalities. And I think with the way things have worked out, where they have the builders remedy lawsuits now, and they tell you how many affordable houses you have to build, and then if you contract with the builder, say for 1,000 affordable housing units, well, then they're able to build another 4,000 market rate housing units to go with it. So because the court says you need to build 1,000 more houses, you now have 5,000 more houses. And that's something that's simply not sustainable for local officials to be able to handle.
And let me just summarize too. Here at council, as a council member, as Anthony mentioned, the legislature had this on their plate for years, and essentially through the Supreme Court, now municipalities, council members like myself, we have essentially 8 months to come up with a plan that satisfies the Supreme Court.
Isn't that time up soon, like next month or this month?
December. We're working on it right now. So, and that's why we're running. They had it on their plate. It was a mess. They didn't get anything done, and now it's at the local level. But now we only have 8 months to get things done. So it's, I'm in favor of assimilation, but again, just because of the mess that's going on in Trenton, it's a mad dash now. We want to get things done right and correctly, and get feedback from everybody.
Now, you guys mentioned, assimilation and stuff. I mean, so City Lab reported that Mercer County, the Trenton-Ewing MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, is the second most segregated economically in the country after Tallahassee, Florida. And at the end, they say, it inhibits incubators of innovation, creativity, and economic progress. It's not just the economic divide in America that's grown wider, it's that the rich and poor effectively occupy different worlds, even when they live in the same cities and metros. With consolidating services, I mean, it just seems, in affordable housing, it seems that some, at the local level, some will just say, okay, we don't want it. We prefer single family houses and no thank you, and that'll be that. And kind of these invisible walls that we all see on our daily commutes in the district, continue to linger on. It's a very diverse district. I mean, our district, I would say, is maybe one of the most diverse in the entire country. I mean, we go from here in Lambertville and the farm towns, older populations in West Amwell and East Amwell, down through Hopewell and West Windsor, and then you get to, Ewing and Trenton and parts of Lawrence. And it's just very economically diverse, very racially diverse. Is segregation something that's inhibiting growth here? Is that contributing at all?
I don't think you can necessarily put everything like that into a box and say that, this, and this are why people decide to settle in whatever communities they decide to. I mean, I live in the city of Trenton. I happened to buy my house from my dad, who was selling it at the time. It was an opportunity for me at the time. I had just graduated college. I was just about to take on a full-time job. Also, because it was in the city of Trenton, it was at a lower price point than, say, if it had been in Hopewell or Princeton or anything like that. And no, at that time, I wouldn't have been able to afford a house in Hopewell or Princeton. And there's nothing wrong with that. Home ownership is a worthy goal. It's not something that necessarily happens right off the bat. But again, getting back to what I started with, you can't necessarily put everything in a box. People have a number of different factors that they take into consideration on where they decide to place their family. And there are a lot of people that choose to live in Trenton, not necessarily because of costs or other factors, but because they want to. And that's why I think it's something that really, it has to be taken out of the realm of the courts. Is something that the legislature has to tackle, because it's causing havoc with local municipalities.
Yeah, it's definitely a gradual problem too. It doesn't just hit us overnight. So again, we're running against somebody who's been in the same seat for 20 years. So just 20 years of not doing anything will naturally get you to where we are today. And just like you mentioned, Steve, about diversity in our district, that's one reason why we're running. It's a very diverse district. Anthony and I represent a diverse team from different backgrounds, different walks of life.
And ages. You'd be, I mean, I would imagine you would be one of the younger assemblymen. How old are you?
Actually, I'm 31.
31, wow, nice.
It's all the door-to-door.
No, it's refreshing. No, I think I look at it as a positive.
No, it's definitely a positive thing. Actually, when I got elected 2 years ago, I was the youngest Filipino-American to be elected into political office, and I'd be the first Filipino-American in the New Jersey legislature if I get elected. So we can make history this year. So.
Really cool. And you got to be around my age. I mean, you sound like 39, I'm 38.
I'm the ripe old age of 38 right now.
Yeah, so we're the same age. Yeah, cool. So, let's just focus on Trenton. You mentioned Gusciora. You're running against Elizabeth Muyo and Reed Gusciora. And Gusciora, one thing to stimulate the economy in Trenton, wants to get rid of the state offices along the waterfront near Arm & Hammer Ballpark, where the Trenton Thunder play. It seems like a good idea. And then, we also have an arena that lost its minor league hockey team, lost its football team, minor league football team, and that's really in danger of becoming a white elephant, Sun National Bank Center. How can we grow business in Trenton? How can we, is his idea not a good one? Is it a good one? What would you guys do? Because, we're a diverse district, but still Trenton is the capital city, and it is for many where people go to work. And, where people go to work, many times on the weekends, it's empty. Right. There was a great concert series there this summer that I really enjoyed. But, I think Trenton makes the world takes, but I do think how Trenton goes has a big effect on all of us here in the 15th. What would you guys do?
Right, and being a resident of this city of Trenton, I'm also the president of the zoning board in Trenton for this current year. And I've been on the zoning board for about 12 years now. Out of the last 14, I did have an 18-month hiatus or so. But I've seen Assemblyman Gusciora's proposal about exploring moving the state office buildings off the riverfront there. It's something that maybe the concept is worth taking a look at. But again, as with everything, the devil is in the details of exactly what you are going to do in its place. You did mention the Sun Bank Arena. I have been able over the last several years to attend several events there, when we had the basketball team, when we had the indoor football team, et cetera. And unfortunately, I was one of the few people there on those occasions. There have been some events here and there held there, and I think that's something that can perhaps be utilized as a place to encourage people to come into the city of Trenton. But I think one of the reasons why we see things the way they are and why you see the mass exodus out of Trenton after the state workers leave is that there's a perception out there that Trenton is a dangerous place to be after dark. Yeah. Some of that is justified. We can't deny the fact that there are certain areas of Trenton that you don't want to be at certain times of the day. But I think maybe Trenton, and this is something that perhaps the state can do, as Trenton is the capital city for the state, is, there has to be some type of effort made to promote the city, to alleviate some of the crime issues that make a lot of people afraid to remain in the city after dark or to come into the city after dark. Speaking as somebody who lives in the city, it's the truth about how, quote-unquote, dangerous it is to live in the city of Trenton lies somewhere between reality and what people's perception is. You do have to be aware, but I think that there are things that can be done in the city, and the city has made some efforts to try to have some evening events. They have their art all night. They have several fairs that they run at various locations throughout the city.
Punk rock flea market.
Right, absolutely, and those are all steps in the right direction.
Pork roll fest. Oh yeah,
that's right.
All of them.
That's right.
That was great.
Yeah, I was there. Yep.
Well spoken from a true Trenton resident. And just to comment, just Anthony and ourselves, we don't have a campaign office. It's all virtual. So it's all conference calls, video chats, and we get things done effectively. So we don't need a waterfront property to get things done. Let's
right,
put it that
and
way.
if there are two people that know how to get things done on a shoestring budget, I think Peter and I can definitely get that done.
All right. Hi, I'm Steve Chernosky here on PANJ Radio with Anthony Giordano and Peter Mendonez, and we are here talking about the election coming up. You can call in with questions. It is 609-460-4673. Again, if you want to call in, we are live right now. 609-460-4673. One more quick question on Trenton. I'm a very big hockey fan. We used to love going to the pizza shops like Papa's and Delo's when they were there, and then going to the game. And it just seemed they all left around the same year, and it was kind of like a toxic combination. And then the team left, and I just posted the team's attendance. When that arena opened up in 2000, there was a lot of excitement. There were a lot of concerts. You go around, you see the people that played. George W. Bush spoke there in 2004, I believe, or it was 2. Is the perception of the city what's not attracting people anymore? And just throwing this out there, the former general manager of the New Jersey Devils, I know it's a divided area. There's Flyer fans, there's Ranger fans. is on record of saying the AHL team, which is a step below, which would be a higher level for hockey, is looking to relocate somewhere close, maybe closer to home. Tom Galiti of the Bergen Record pressed him. There's been long talks of Devils moving their possible AHL team to Trenton or another locations. Lakewood and Sayreville were also mentioned in the past as potential arena sites. Is it part of the perception of Trenton? I know the writer from the beat writer from the Trentonian, Mike Ashmore, says wouldn't be a good idea. Should there be some sort of a proposal to get a top tier hockey team back? Is hockey not the right sport? The baseball team's been losing attendance over the years.
When I was living, I mentioned I lived in Newark for a little bit, and that's when the Devils first came to Newark. And everybody around me was like, "Well, who's going to come to Newark to watch the Devils play?" And
Yeah, same problem.
But it turned out really well. Not a big, I'm more of a Rangers fan, and that would probably make me lose votes, but that's okay.
No, it's a diverse district. You're forgiven there. There's Rangers, there's Flyers. I mean, we're diverse. We have Yankee fans. I mean, we have Flyer fans. I mean, we talked about diversity. We're also split sports-wise, too.
But if Newark can do it, I don't see why Trenton couldn't.
Right. And Trenton is, geographically is centrally located almost between Philadelphia and New York. So it presents almost the perfect geographical opportunity where if you have teams that are based out of Philadelphia or are based out of New York, they have a place where they can go to have their developmental teams where, hey, if they get the call to the show, they don't have real far to go to get to the big time. So I think that's something that should definitely be explored.
Okay, Peter, you work on solar energy now. You used to work for PSE&G, is that correct?
PSE&G and IBM, yep, that's correct.
So I have a question from a Robert S. Phillips. He's a farmer in South Jersey, out of district, but I knew he was passionate about this question, and he asked it to me. He said, solar energy products. Why should electric ratepayers contribute to subsidized money losing solar projects that benefit only the wealthy and well-connected? I'm quoting now. Increasingly, these projects are going up on valuable farmland. Why not mandate these solar farms in the desert Southwest where they make more economic sense? I have seen a lot. I basically right up 202. I see a lot going up. And if our property taxes are so high, that would mean we have some of the most valuable land in the nation. Should we be building solar panels on a lot of this valuable land?
So actually, it's right now what the state is doing is actually they're not subsidizing for solar on farmland, but more on like landfills. So who wants to develop?
Suggest that, right?
Who wants to develop on a landfill? So that's that's a perfect place to build a clean energy power plant. And just to clarify, what I do is more on solar and battery storage. So when you being able to store that extra energy and use it when you need it is essentially what I try to do. So
cool. We always need a better battery.
Indeed.
So let's talk about Penn East because that's the Penn East pipeline. Very big issue here. It's not going into Lambertville proper, but it is going into the district, and I believe the terminus is in Hopewell. What are your guys' thoughts on the pipeline? A lot of environmentalists are proposed to it. People worry about water quality. They did reroute it. So if any listener's not familiar, I know you all are, but it's basically going for the Marcellus Shale where the fracking is occurring, bringing natural gas here to New Jersey over the Delaware River from Pennsylvania. We're not in the Marcellus Shale, but it would come here. PSE&G would benefit. And what are your guys' feelings on that? Peter, I'll start with you first on that.
Thank you. That's almost a softball question. So what I do for the company we founded in Princeton is essentially the whole goal is energy independence, not just for the country or for the state, but for the actual homeowner, so that we don't need major infrastructure like the pipeline. On top of that, though, I want to add there are things going on now for fracking to improve conventional methods. Just like in Princeton, they're doing some heavy research on using laser technology as opposed to pumping water in the old conventional ways. But just to be clear, what I do professionally is to fight things like this, so we don't need major infrastructural hauls.
So you would be for it, or you would be for the pipeline as it's proposed now?
I'm against the pipeline as it's proposed now. As I mentioned, my company wants to bring energy independence to the local homeowners so they don't need a natural gas pipeline all the way from Pennsylvania.
Now, one thing with that is that, a lot of the environmentalists, I don't hear them asked often on this. I think NPR did a story on the dangers of transporting natural gas by train, by vehicle. The crash incidents across the country are up, and that they're actually arguing that statistically a pipeline is much safer than transporting natural. If it's going to be transported anyway, transporting it by truck or by train is much less safe than transporting it by pipeline. Would you agree with that?
So it's definitely safer using a pipeline that is built to last for, essentially spec'd out for maybe 100 plus years. I definitely agree with that. But again, I think it's all local. What the natural gas pipeline is for essentially powering up big power plants and also to heat, provide heat as well. But if we can harness things, locally, like in your own home, like the sun, I think that's a better way.
As you said, there have been numerous instances where you've had crashes with rail cars and everything, and it is important that we have stable, secure ways to transport our energy around. I think one of the issues with the Penny's pipeline has been that there has been a very poor job in the way that information has been disseminated to people. People become very upset when they feel that something is being shoved down their throat.
That's right.
And they don't feel that they have a say in the way it's being done. I think there were flaws in the entire way that the process was broached in the first place. We know that in the end, a lot of times, some form of those pipelines will be approved. And if that's going to be the case here, I think a better job needs to be done to inform people of exactly where it's going to be done, why it's going to be done, why it's necessary, and what the resulting cost-benefit analysis will be, and also the fact that it will be done in an environmentally sensitive way.
Steve Chernosky here with Anthony Giordano and Peter Mendonez, and we are here on PNJ Radio. Guys, one of the final questions I think I'd like to ask you is, what is the biggest difference between you and your opponents?
Well, do we have another hour?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of things. One, I really wanted to talk a little bit about gerrymandering because that was kind of at the heart of why we're running. So I forget what year, but when we redistricted, Reed Gutierrez essentially moved.
Your opponent?
Our opponent moved to be in a favorable district. So in that
From Princeton to Trenton, right?
From Princeton to Trenton.
Princeton is the 16th, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And Anthony, being a Trenton resident, for a lot longer time than Reed, I think is very representative of that. But the bottom line is if we're faced with a fight, the odds are against us. We don't just pack up and go. We run. We don't run. We fight, and that's one big thing. The other thing is also what we're representing as a diverse team. Anthony and I, we represent diversity, millennials for the district. We West Windsor and Trenton. And the other thing, too, is about, personally, just creating jobs. I'm a sustainability expert. I actually create jobs, not legislation. So that's the kind of representatives we need in the legislature, and that's what I think is really my big difference with Reed and Liz.
As Pete referenced, we represent new faces for the future. We have a clear difference of opinion with our opponents on a lot of issues. And I think that's evident in our approach to doing business. We recognize that you're not going to attract businesses to New Jersey. You're not going to create jobs in New Jersey by having high taxes and burdensome regulations. And the fact of the matter is our opponents have been supporters of some of these policies that have led to high taxes and small numbers of jobs, if not reductions in the numbers of jobs being created in New Jersey. And, our one opponent has been in the legislature for 20 years now. And you have to run on the record. And the fact of the matter is, over the last 20 years, New Jersey has become less affordable than it was before. We're not seen as an attractive place to do business. And Pete and I think it's time for a change. So we want to take things in the other direction, very clearly. We think that it's important to have pro-growth policies that come with low taxes and fewer burdensome regulations. We need to cut red tape. Again, getting back to what I said before, the fact that you have to create a state department to help people navigate other state departments tells you that something is clearly wrong and it's time for a change.
Even the approach of this interview, which we definitely appreciate. I think our opponents were invited the same time that we were invited. Is that
is
correct?
true. That is true.
And yet they're not here. But Anthony and I, we were blessed and honored to have the opportunity just to come on here to talk to all the listeners and to meet the local stations, and the local media. And I think that's a testament of how we would approach when we get elected. And that's a major difference because, like we said before, all politics is local, and it's great to spend a Sunday night, on the radio.
That's right. You can't just, rely on the fact that you think you're in a safe district. The fact of the matter is you have to run on the record that you have, make your presentation to the people. So that's why Pete and I are here. We want to let everybody know what we're about, and we would be very appreciative of your support on November 3rd.
Half the battle's showing up.
Facebook moved its East Coast headquarters to New York City, where I was kind of like hoping Governor Christie would have used his relationship with Mark Zuckerberg to say, hey, bro, come on over here. Like, do it in New Jersey, do it in, Princeton, even though it's not a district anymore. It would be a nice place. It's a cool place. Can New Jersey kind of create the type of jobs that you're doing, Peter? When you talk about millennials, everything I read, New Jersey almost seems to go against this, but it's like everything I read is like, millennials are all moving to the cities where they can have their brew pubs and their hipster coffee shops, and is this something New Jersey lacks? I mean, we do have some good cities here in the district and in the state, but I guess when you're also competing not with just other cities in the country, but in the world, and what could our state do to kind of lure these type of awesome startups or awesome incubators, and besides Princeton University helping, what is something that we can do to get some of these businesses? I mean, Amazon certainly is something. It's not in district, but it's something. It does affect a lot of people in district. Well, what can we do here?
Well, first on Christie, though, I think Senator Cory Booker probably has a better relationship, being that he got $10 million from Mark Zuckerberg to the city of Newark. So that's an easy phone call from Mr. Booker to Mr. Zuckerberg. I think you're right, though. As a millennial, we're looking for the cool coffee shops, the cool brew pubs like we have here in Lambertville.
We have a great one in Rojo's and right by Bucks County Coffee. And what am I forgetting? The Lambertville Trading Company. We have a lot of cool coffee shops here, trying to plug them here in Lambertville.
That's right. And my PR firm is actually, my private sector PR firm is in Lambertville, so I love making the trek down here and working with them. So I think that's what it is. We got to revitalize our downtowns, our shore, our shore properties. I think we've done a great job building that up, and we got to continue doing that.
All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. My name is Steve Chernosky here on PANJ Radio. This was our election special with Anthony Giordano and Peter Mendonez, and they are running. And the election, again, can you guys remind them?
November 3rd.
November 3rd.
Go out and vote. General Assembly seats. It is on the top of the ticket. Again, guys, very much appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, for the opportunity.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.